always thought the most dangerous man in my life would be a stranger. I never imagined he'd be the man who taught me how to throw a baseball, the man whose last name I carry, the man I called Dad. My father murdered my stepmother, then impregnated my fiancée. Now he wants my forgiveness. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I need you to understand something before I tell you this story. I was happy. Not the fragile, performative kind of happy people post about online with perfect lighting and carefully chosen captions. I mean the real kind. The quiet, unremarkable, deeply satisfying kind that sneaks up on you on an ordinary Tuesday morning when you're making coffee and you look around at your life and think, yeah, this is enough. My name is Caleb Ward, 31 years old. Franklin, Tennessee, the kind of town where Friday nights smell like barbecue smoke and cut grass, where everybody waves from their porch even if they only half know your name. My father, Raymond Ward, was the most respected man I knew. Retired Army, church deacon, little league coach for 11 years. The kind of man whose handshake meant something, whose word was his bond. I measured every decision I made against him. Would Dad be proud of this? He was the standard I held myself to, which is why what came later didn't just break my heart. It broke something structural, something load-bearing. My mother died of cancer when I was 12, a long, ugly goodbye that taught me things about loss no kid should have to learn. My dad held us together through sheer will afterward. Just the two of us in that big house learning how to breathe in all that empty space. He remarried when I was 20. Donna, a kindergarten teacher with a warm laugh and a habit of humming while she cooked. She wasn't trying to replace my mother and seemed to understand instinctively that the position wasn't available. So she carved her own space instead. Gentler. Different. It took me 2 years to fully let her in, but I did. By 25, I genuinely loved her. She used to save me a plate whenever she cooked, even when I hadn't said I was coming. I just had a feeling, she'd always say. Donna deserved a long, ordinary life. She didn't get it. Now let me tell you about Ava. Ava Mitchum came into my life at the worst possible time, which I've learned is usually exactly when the right people show up. I just ended a 2-year relationship that had been dying for 18 months, longer than either of us wanted to admit. I was hollow and tired, and the last thing I was looking for was someone new. She was a physical therapist at the rehab center where my dad recovered from knee surgery. Professional, direct, a little impatient with nonsense. She had this way of looking at you, fully, without distraction, that made you feel like the only person in the building. We started talking in the hallway one afternoon while I waited for Dad's session to end. She corrected something I said about his recovery timeline. I laughed because she was right and clearly knew it. We exchanged numbers under the pretense of coordinating his care. By the 3rd week, we both knew that was a pretense. 8 months ago, I got down on one knee in our kitchen with her favorite song on the speaker and a ring I'd spent 3 months choosing. She said yes before I finished the sentence. We had a venue booked. A date in April. Her dress was already altered, hanging in a garment bag at her mother's house in Murfreesboro. I want you to hold that image, that garment bag hanging there waiting. Because the morning I drove to my father's house to drop off some paperwork, that dress was still hanging. That venue was still booked. And I was still, in every way that counted, a man with a future. I let myself in with my key when no one answered. The house was quiet in a way that felt wrong. Not empty quiet. Occupied quiet. The kind that has breathing in it. I found Donna in the living room. I won't describe what I saw. I've said it enough times to enough detectives and therapists that the words have worn grooves in me. What I'll tell you is that my father was in the house, sitting in his armchair by the window, the one he always used to watch the game, still in his pajamas, hands folded in his lap like he was waiting for church to start. He looked up at me, and in a voice so calm it turned my blood to ice water, he said, "I figured you'd be the one to come, son. Go ahead and call it in. I'm done running." He hadn't run at all. He'd just sat down in his chair. In that moment, the man I'd spent 31 years measuring myself against became a stranger wearing my father's face. Before we go further, have you ever looked at someone you loved and suddenly not recognized them at all? Not because they changed, but because you finally saw who they really were. Tell me in the comments. Because what I'm about to share next made that moment in the armchair feel like just the beginning. Next 72 hours dissolved into blue and red lights, yellow crime scene tape, and phone calls I barely remember making. My father was taken into custody without resistance. He didn't protest, didn't ask for a lawyer. He just stood, held out his wrists, and walked to the door like a man who had already made his peace. Ava was with me through all of it. She sat beside me that first night, didn't try to fill the silence with words, just stayed. Her hand on my knee. Her presence solid and warm. I woke up at 3 in the morning with a blanket over me and the lamp turned low. She was the one consistent thing in a world that had proven it could dissolve without warning. Or so I believed. 11 days after my father's arrest, I went back to the family home to sort through Donna's belongings alongside her sister Patricia, who'd driven up from Alabama. I threw myself into the mechanical task because staying busy meant not having to feel. Patricia called me upstairs from the bedroom with a strange flatness in her voice that made me take the stairs faster than intended. She was holding a phone. Donna's old backup phone from the nightstand drawer. "Caleb," she said slowly, "I debated whether to show you this. But I decided you had a right." She turned the screen toward me. A text thread. Between Donna and a contact saved simply as A. 8 months old, right around the time of our engagement. "He's going to find out eventually," Donna had written. Raymond made sure of that. "You need to let this go, Donna. For everyone's sake." "I can't. That girl is carrying his child and she's engaged to his son. This doesn't just go away." I read it 3 times. That girl is carrying his child. Engaged to his son. I sat down on the edge of the bed because my legs stopped working. Outside, a neighbor's lawnmower droned on, absurdly, indifferently normal. I drove home on autopilot. Sat in the parking lot of our apartment complex for 20 minutes. Then went upstairs. Ava was in the kitchen in her scrubs, heating up leftovers. She turned when she heard the door and her face did something complicated. A flash of recognition, like she could tell from the way I was standing that everything had shifted. I put Donna's phone on the counter between us. Screen up. Text thread visible. I watched her look at it. I watched the color leave her face. "How long?" I asked. My voice didn't sound like mine. Too level. Too quiet. She closed her eyes. "Caleb, let me explain." "How long, Ava?" "Once," she whispered. "Before we were serious, before the engagement." "I know that doesn't." "Before us. Or before the ring." She didn't answer. Which was its own answer. "Is it his?" 4 seconds of silence. I counted them. "Yes," she said. I walked to the bedroom, sat on the floor with my back against the bed, and pressed my palms flat against the hardwood, needing to feel something solid. For the second time in 11 days, the world I had carefully, lovingly built collapsed into dust. I went quiet for 3 days. Not the peaceful kind, the compressed kind, where pressure builds past the point where words are useful. Ava tried to explain. She told me it happened during our 2-week break 8 months earlier. A rough patch I'd experienced as a temporary stumble and she'd apparently experienced differently. She said my father had pursued her. That it was a mistake she'd tried to bury. That she'd discovered the pregnancy after we got back together and was too terrified to tell me. "I love you," she said from the bedroom doorway. "I know that probably means nothing right now. But it's true. Did you know he was my father when it happened?" I asked. The pause was a millisecond too long. "Yes," she said quietly. "I need you to go stay somewhere else. Please." She left that night. My best friend Trey came over the next day and said the only thing that actually helped. "Man, that is genuinely the worst thing I have ever heard." No silver linings. No advice I didn't ask for. Just acknowledgement. I've never been more grateful for a friend in my life. 3 weeks later, Ava's mother Linda called me. Ava had been admitted to the hospital. Dangerously high blood pressure. The baby was fine, but she was on bed rest for 72 hours. Ava didn't know Linda was calling. She'd asked her not to. I was in my car within 10 minutes. Not because I had resolved anything. Not because I'd found forgiveness or clarity. I went because somewhere underneath all the wreckage, there was still a version of me that loved her. And apparently that version still had access to my car keys. When I pushed open the hospital room door, she was staring at the ceiling. She turned her head and her face did something I'll carry for the rest of my life. The expression of someone who had genuinely believed they'd forfeited the right to be shown up for, encountering evidence to the contrary. "You didn't have to come," she said. "I know," I said. I pulled a chair to her bedside and sat. We were quiet for a long time. The monitor beeped steadily. "I hate that I keep wanting to ask how you're doing," she said finally. "I'm the one who caused all of this and I still," her voice cracked. "Ava. I'm sorry. I know it's not enough. But every single day I wake up sick with guilt. Not fear about the pregnancy, just guilt. Because you are the best man I've ever known and you deserved so much better." I stayed 2 hours. We didn't resolve anything. But when I left, I squeezed her hand once, briefly, almost involuntarily, and she closed her eyes like I'd handed her something she thought she'd permanently lost. "Here's what I want to ask you, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. If someone you loved made a devastating mistake but owned it completely, no excuses, full accountability, could you find your way back? Because what happens next might surprise you." I went to see Raymond. The county detention facility was 40 minutes from Franklin. A flat, colorless building off a state route. I sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes trying to find some emotional preparation. I couldn't. So I went in without it. He looked older. Not dramatically, it had only been a month, but the largeness was gone. The gravity. He looked like a man-shaped space where a man used to be. He folded his hands on the table, the same posture as the armchair, and said, "Thank you for coming." "I'm not here for you," I said. "I need to understand. Tell me everything. Don't shape it for me." He talked for an hour. He'd met Ava at a fundraising event I hadn't attended. They'd spoken for an hour. He said he recognized an attraction and tried to bury it. He told himself it ended there. But he sought her out again. And again. And somewhere in a story he delivered with the flat effect of a man who had already judged himself irredeemable. A line was crossed. "I knew it was wrong before it started," he said. "I didn't stop. And when she told you she was pregnant, I panicked. I told her it had to stay buried. That if it came out, it would destroy everything. But Donna found out." His jaw tightened. "She found some messages. Confronted me. I told her the truth. And she said she was going to tell me. She said you had a right to know. That she couldn't look you in the eye knowing what she knew while you planned that wedding. She said she'd rather lose me than lose herself." The room went very still. "And you?" "I lost my mind," he said quietly. "That is not an excuse. There is no excuse. I just need you to know the man who raised you, who held you when your mother died, he was still in there. He just got buried under something he couldn't survive." I thought about Donna's soft knock on my teenage bedroom door. The plates of food she'd save. I just had a feeling. I thought about the fact that she'd chosen me. Chosen to tell me the truth at the cost of everything. "She loved me enough to die for the truth," I said. "Yes," he said. I stood up. "I'm not telling you I forgive you today. I don't know if I ever will. But I needed to hear it from you. I needed to look at you." I walked to the door. "Caleb." I stopped but didn't turn around. "I'm sorry. For all of it. Donna told me once you were the best man she'd ever known," I said. "I'm glad she didn't live long enough to stop believing that." I walked out into the gray afternoon, sat in my car, and cried for the first time since any of this began. The ugly, heaving kind. The kind that means something finally broke loose. Spring came early to Franklin. Ava had been discharged and was at her mother's on bed rest. She texted once a day. Simple, no pressure. "Thinking of you." Sometimes a photo of something small. A bird outside her window. A funny bumper sticker. Small ordinary things like she was building a bridge out of the most mundane possible materials, one plank at a time. I started responding. We had a real phone call. 10:30 at night. I called her. I went to see my dad, I told her. How was that? Like getting a diagnosis you already suspected. Doesn't shock you. Still changes everything. We talked for 2 hours. About small things at first, then real things. About what we'd built, what had cracked, and what, if anything, was left in the rubble. We didn't arrive anywhere definitive. But when I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in 2 months. Not happiness. Just the possibility of it. Then the story broke publicly. I don't know who leaked it. However it happened, the story of Raymond Ward, decorated veteran, church deacon, little league coach, who'd murdered his wife to cover up an affair with his son's fiancée, who was carrying his child, was everywhere. Local news first. Then national. Then viral in the way that only the most grotesquely human stories get. I was the son. Ava was named. Our photographs. Our relationship. Suddenly, public property. 2 in the morning, exhausted and raw, I made the mistake of reading the comments. Most were cruel in that cheerful, consequence-free way the internet specializes in. But what broke through my defenses was a quote from Ava's cousin Brianna, given to a local outlet. Ava knew what she was doing. She wasn't some victim, she made a choice. I called Ava immediately. I need to ask you something, I said. Were there other times? Was it more than once? Caleb, I already told you. Tell me again. Right now. 3 seconds of silence. It was twice, she said quietly. I told you once because I was ashamed. I'm sorry. It was twice. I hung up, stood in the dark of my apartment and felt something final click into place. The feeling of a door closing you'd been hoping to keep open. Trey came over at 2:15 in the morning. Stayed until sunrise. April arrived. The month we were supposed to get married. I handled the cancellations mechanically. Deposits forfeited, vendors notified, the whole disassembly of a future that no longer existed in its original form. I spent that month walking. Long aimless walks through Franklin. Past the Little League field. Past First Baptist. Past the streets where I'd grown up. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just reminding myself the ground was still solid. Linda called me once more. Just to tell me Ava was having a hard few weeks, that the baby was fine, and that Ava had asked her to stop updating me because she didn't want me to feel obligated. She said to tell you she hopes you're okay, Linda said. And that she doesn't blame you. Whatever you decide. I sat with that for a long time. Whatever you decide. The thing about a clean exit, truly clean, no guilt attached, is that it forces you to examine what you actually want when self-protection is off the table. When you can't hide behind obligation or pressure. When it's just you and the question and the quiet. I thought about what Ava had said in the hospital. I refuse to be ashamed of this baby. I thought about Trey's words. Are you using that specific thing as an excuse to end something you still want, because that's safer than trying? I thought about Donna. About what it cost to love someone honestly. About the fact that she had paid that cost all the way to the end. What did I want? I wanted the last year to have been a different story. I wanted Donna back. I wanted my father to be who I'd believed him to be. But I couldn't have any of that. What I had was a Tuesday evening in April, a phone in my hand, and the number of a woman who had made a devastating mistake, owned it without excuse, and spent 3 months showing me, one small text at a time, that she was still there. Still steady. Still herself. I picked up the phone. She picked up on the 3rd ring. Caleb. Careful. Like she was holding something fragile. Hi, I said. Hi. I was on my balcony. The dogwoods were in full bloom. The street below was golden in the early evening light, the kind that makes ordinary things look like they mean something. I've been thinking, I started and stopped, because I'd rehearsed this 40 times and every version dissolved when I tried to speak it out loud. You don't have to say anything you're not ready for, she said quietly. Let me try, I said. I am not over what happened. I want to be honest about that. But I've been thinking about Donna, about how she chose me when it cost her everything. And I've been asking myself what it would mean to actually live in a way that honors that. Caleb. I'm not ready to walk back into what we had, but I think I'd like to try something new. Something built on the actual ground we're standing on now. If you're willing. 6 seconds of silence. I counted again. Different from the last time I'd counted. I've been willing since the beginning, she said. I just didn't think I had the right to ask. You don't have to ask, I said. I'm offering. She cried. The real kind, the releasing kind. And I stood on my balcony in the April light and listened and felt something I hadn't expected. Not happiness. Not the uncomplicated joy of our early days. Something older and more durable. The feeling of a foundation being poured after the old structure has been demolished. Not a rebuild. A new build. The months that followed weren't easy. We started over slowly, with the help of a therapist who had zero tolerance for either of us performing our emotions instead of actually feeling them. Ava moved back to Franklin in June. We found a new apartment, neutral ground, somewhere neither of us had lived before. On a Thursday morning in August, she went into labor. I was there. The baby was a girl. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Ava named her Claire. Middle name Donna. I held Claire while Ava slept, this small, brand new, completely uninformed person who had arrived through one of the most complicated circumstances imaginable and was utterly unbothered by all of it. She had her mother's eyes and perfect tiny hands, and she smelled like something from before language. I thought about my father, about the sentencing in May, about the visiting room, about the folded hands. About the letter I'd sent him. Not forgiveness. Not yet, maybe not for a long time, but acknowledgement. I know what you did. I'm choosing to live anyway. I'm choosing not to let what you became define what I become. I thought about Donna every day now. Not with the raw grief of the early weeks, but with a quiet gratitude. She'd saved me a plate she somehow knew I'd want. She'd knocked twice, soft. She'd chosen me. I looked down at Claire. I don't know exactly what I am to you yet, I said softly. I don't know what the right word is. But I know this, you are going to know you are wanted. Every single day. That's my promise. 6 months later, on a quiet Saturday in February. No venue, no carefully selected colors, no garment bag. Ava and I got married in Linda's backyard in Murfreesboro. Trey as my best man. Claire in a white onesie in her grandmother's arms. Completely unimpressed by the proceedings. It was nothing like the wedding we had planned. It was better. Not because it was perfect. Not because the past was erased or the wounds were fully healed. But because every person in that backyard was there by choice. Real, costly, clear-eyed choice. The choice of people who had looked at the full, complicated, sometimes brutal truth of each other and decided it was still worth showing up for. The officiant asked if I took Ava to be my wife. I looked at her, standing in a simple ivory dress, no fanfare, just her face in the winter afternoon light, open and nervous and completely herself, and I said I do with the full weight of everything I now understood that phrase to mean. She said it back the same way. And somewhere I believe Donna smiled. Here's my final question, and I mean this sincerely. Do you believe that real love can survive the unsurvivable? Not the Instagram version. The kind that chooses you after your worst truth, in your most broken state? Let me know in the comments. Because this story taught me it can. And I hope yours does too. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as interesting and even more intriguing as can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.